Have you ever wondered if the true strength of a man is measured by the height of his throne, or by how firmly he stands when his entire world is being torn apart by those he once called family? Today we bring you a story of fierce resilience and a devotion so profound it will leave you in awe. In this heart-wrenching chapter, we witness the ultimate cruelty of Mr. Juan, a man whose heart has become as cold and sterile as a tomb, as he seeks to erase the last fragment of happiness from his son's life. As the humble wedding celebration of a fallen CEO is leveled in an instant, we see Jame prove that honor is not something you lose with your fortune, but something you defend with your life. Witness a moment where red velvet meets the mud of betrayal, and a sacred vow is whispered amidst the howling storm of hatred. Stay with us to see how love refuses to be buried under the debris of malice. The morning sun hung low and pale over the small, muddy yard, casting long, fragile shadows across the simple wooden table where Jame and Diep had prepared their modest wedding feast. Jame stood tall in his red velvet ao dye, the rich fabric glowing with a defiant brilliance that seemed to offend the very air around them. He looked at Diep, her beauty radiant despite the tear-streaked traces on her face, her eyes filled with a faith that felt like a healing miracle in their exile. But the fragile peace was shattered in a heartbeat as a group of men, shadows of Mr. Juan's cold power, descended upon them with a ruthless efficiency. Tables were overturned, the simple flowers they had gathered were trampled into the mud, and the few tokens of their love were smashed into unrecognizable fragments. A wave of intense, agonizing regret crashed over Jame, a soul-wrenching sorrow that he could not protect this one sacred moment from his father's relentless tyranny. He felt the weight of his perceived foolishness for believing that love could exist in a world ruled by such heartless greed. "I am so deeply sorry, my Diep," he whispered as the chaos swirled around them, his voice laced with an emotion so raw it felt like a silent prayer amidst the ruins. The indifferent sound of the rain began to fall, a cold witness to the destruction of their only hope. Every shattered dish, every torn ribbon was a testament to a cruelty that knew no bounds, a shadow cast by a man who valued gold more than his own flesh and blood. Jame recalled the past days of his former glory, the luxury and the empty respect of the boardroom, realizing that none of it mattered compared to the pure, overwhelming devotion he felt for the woman currently trembling by his side. As the men moved to tear away the red silk of their makeshift altar, Jame stood his ground, his movements firm and steady like a rock, shielding Diep's frail body with his own. He realized in that quiet, devastating moment that his father could destroy their house and their feast, but he could never touch the temple they had built within their souls. The struggle was no longer just about survival, it was a battle for their dignity, a fight to prove that even in the mud, their love remained a sacred and thiêng light that no darkness could ever dim. As the henchmen finished their work and retreated into the gray mist, leaving behind nothing but the debris of their dreams, Jame turned to Diep. Her bridal man was crooked and her face was wet with tears, but her spirit remained unbroken. He reached out with a hand that had once commanded empires, now gently wiping away her tears with the sleeve of his red velvet garment. It was a touching and meaningful gesture, a sign of a love that grew stronger with every blow it received. He knew deep down that this destruction was just another test, another layer of fire meant to temper the steel of their commitment. He vowed that he would never allow this hatred to poison his heart, and that every drop of rain falling on them would only serve to wash away the last traces of his old life, leaving only the pure essence of his devotion to her. This was his silent, eternal vow, a new determination being born from the ashes of their wedding feast, to dedicate every breath he had left to building a world where Diep would never have to cry again. Suddenly, the cold, distant voice of Mr. Juan seemed to echo in the wind, a ghost of the past reminding them of the price of their defiance. But Jame only held Diep closer, his eyes burning with a radiant fire that outshone the gray clouds above. He understood now that their wedding was not about the ceremony they had lost, but about the resilience they had found. "Go back and tell the man who sent you." Jame spoke into the empty air, his voice filled with an authority that no loss of title could ever take away. "He can destroy our feast, he can level our home, but he will never ever break the bond that makes us one." As they stood together amidst the ruins of their wedding, in their mud-stained red velvet, they were more powerful than Mr. Hoan could ever imagine. They were a testament to a love that survives when everything else is gone, a promise that as long as they had each other, they were already home. The gray mist of the afternoon seemed to thicken, wrapping the ruined yard in a cold, indifferent embrace as the echoes of destruction slowly faded into the distance. Jame knelt amidst the broken wood and scattered red petals, his velvet audi now stained with the mud of betrayal, yet his posture remained as unyielding as a mountain peak. He reached out to take Diep's hands, which were trembling like fragile leaves in the wind, and held them with a strength that felt like a sanctuary in this desolate place. The silence between them was heavy, filled with a soulful pain that transcended words, a deep and agonizing realization that their journey toward happiness was paved with the sharpest thorns of malice. Jame looked into her eyes, seeing not the fear he expected, but a radiant faith that outshone the gloom of the storm. In that quiet, broken moment, he realized that a wedding is not a ceremony performed in a hall, but a covenant forged in the fire of shared suffering. He felt a wave of intense, overwhelming devotion wash over him, a sacred certainty that no matter how many times their world was leveled, they would rebuild it with the bricks of their love. "My Diep," Jame whispered, his voice resonating with a quiet power that seemed to command the very rain to stop. "They have broken our tables and torn our silk, but they have only revealed the true strength of what lies beneath." He pulled a simple woven grass ring from his pocket, a symbol of a love that didn't need gold to be sacred and sublime. As he gently slid the humble gift onto her finger, a profound peace settled over them, a touching and meaningful stillness that made the surrounding debris seem like nothing more than a distant, hollow dream. Diep looked down at the ring, then up at the man who had protected her with his own body, a smile breaking through her tears like the first ray of dawn after a long, dark night. She understood that this moment of the Nguyen among the ruins was the most honest and powerful vow they could ever take. "As long as you are standing beside me, Jame," she replied, her voice firm with an unwavering faith, "I have everything I ever prayed for, and no shadow can ever take that away." They leaned into each other, their red wedding garments creating a striking contrast against the gray mud, a vivid symbol of a hope that refuses to die. Jame closed his eyes for a moment, letting the cold rain wash away the last remnants of his aristocratic pride, replacing it with a raw, unshakable resolve. He realized that the golden titles his father held were nothing but heavy chains, while this poverty had given him the freedom to love with a soul that was finally, truly alive. He whispered to himself a solemn confession, promising that every scar earned today would become a badge of honor in their future kingdom of peace. Every drop of mud on his red velvet was a mark of a battle won, a sign that they had endured the worst of the ghost of the past and emerged unbroken. The philosophy of their love was simple yet profound. True beauty is not found in perfection, but in the strength to remain whole when everything around you is shattered. He vowed to be the sun that would dry her tears and the earth that would support her every step, no matter how treacherous the path ahead might become. Unbeknownst to them, a shadow stood just beyond the broken fence, sheltered by the drooping leaves of a banana tree, her face wet with tears of both sorrow and a fierce, secret pride. It was Mrs. Huyen, who had Len Lut followed the henchman, her heart breaking as she watched the destruction of her son's only joy. She had seen Jame stand defiant against his father's tyranny, his spirit unbroken even as his home was leveled. And she knew then that he had become a man far greater than Mr. Juan could ever understand. Moving with the silence of a ghost, she placed a small silk-wrapped package near the entrance, a collection of warm food, medicine, and a hidden document that could one day help Jame reclaim what was rightfully his. She whispered a soulful prayer for their protection, a silent blessing from a mother whose love had to remain a mystery to keep them safe from the reach of the ghost of the past. Inside the shack, Jame later found the package and felt a mysterious wave of warmth, a sign that even in the darkest hour, an unseen hand was shielding them from total despair. As the fire in the hearth flickered back to life, Jame held Diep tight, promising that this day of ruins would be remembered as the foundation of a legacy that would never, ever be extinguished.
Buổi sáng tưởng chừng yên bình nhanh chóng biến thành ác mộng khi tay sai của Mr. Hoàng ập đến phá tan lễ cưới đơn sơ của Jame và Diep. Bàn tiệc bị lật đổ, hoa cưới bị giẫm nát, lụa đỏ hòa vào bùn đất như biểu tượng cho sự phản bội tàn nhẫn từ chính gia đình. Đứng giữa đống đổ nát, Jame nhận ra cha mình có thể phá hủy mọi vật chất, nhưng không thể chạm tới lời thề trong tim họ. Anh che chở Diep, kiên quyết giữ vững phẩm giá giữa cơn bão hận thù. Từ tro tàn cô